Hi everybody, this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel today. Today I have a layout that I made using the May My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit. I started with one of the cut files that was available to subscribers for May, and I backed it with some of the pattern papers that were in the kit. Then I cut out another cut file, this time without the inner cuts, and I glued that to the back of the backed cut file, and I like doing that because I plan on doing some stitching. Right now I'm using a paper piercer and I'm punching the holes where I'm going to be stitching, and I think that that extra piece of white cardstock helps the entire cut file to be more sturdy. When I punch the holes and do the stitching, I don't have to worry that I'm going to rip the pattern paper with that extra piece of paper reinforcing everything. Off camera, I did all of the stitching with some white embroidery thread. I did a simple back stitch. It takes a little bit of time to do the stitching, but I think it really adds a lot to the layout. Then I used some tape and I taped down any pieces of the embroidery thread that I wanted to secure, and then I added some fun foam to the entire back of the cut file. You could use a more permanent glue to attach a cut file down to a piece of pattern paper, but I always like the option of being able to pull it up and reposition it. However, if I don't want to move it around, this adhesive will hold it there indefinitely. So now I have my cut file positioned on one of the beautiful pattern papers that was in the kit. This pattern paper is from the Simple Stories Simple Vintage Indigo Garden collection. I thought that this pattern paper was perfect to use with the cut file because it is darker and I think it really makes that cut file pop. And then I also like the idea of there being so many florals and so many plants on it, since the title is Love Grows Here. The photos are of my 3 dogs. We have Rory on the left. That's the photo that I'm working on right now. We have Jackson in the center, and then we have Coco all the way on the right. And I'm popping up the photo of Rory right now on some foam, and I'm going to do the same thing to the photo of Coco on the right, and then the photo of Jackson is just going to be attached directly to the page. I mounted each of the photos on some white cardstock, and then after that I mounted each of the photos on a different pattern paper that I used to back the cut file. Sometimes I laugh at the thought of having 3 dogs because one of my friends got a 3rd dog, and I was thinking, wow, that's a lot of dogs to take care of. And now, of course, we have 3 dogs, and it's really not that bad, but it is a decent amount of work to have 3 dogs, and I have to keep resisting the urge to get a 4th dog. My daughter Julia is constantly sending me links to different dogs that are up for adoption, and she's tempted me a few times, but so far we're still sticking with the 3 dogs. So now I have all of my photos in the places that I want them, but I wanted to distress the edges, so I removed them from the page, and I'm using the edge of my scissor and adding a little bit of distressing to each of those pattern papers that they're mounted on. Now I have all of the major elements attached down to the page, and now I'm going to start working on the embellishments. So there were some super beautiful pink flowers that were included in this kit, and I wanted to add a little bit more sparkle to them. So I'm using some heavy gel medium. I always call it heavy duty gel medium, but it's not heavy duty, it's heavy gel medium. This is the matte kind, so it won't be shiny when it dries. And I'm putting it on the tips of all of the petals, and then also putting a little bit on the center of the flower. And then I'm dipping each of the flowers in diamond dust, and that is a very fine glass glitter that has a lot of sparkle and shine to it. And then I'm putting the flowers to the side so that they'll dry. And then when they dry, you don't see the gel medium anymore, you just see the sparkle of the diamond dust. And then I did the same thing to some of the leaves that were included in the flower pack. I was thinking that the top area of the background looked very solid to me, and so I was thinking that some white splatters might look good, not just on the navy blue part of the paper, but on the whole pattern paper. So I covered up my photos, and now I am splattering the white acrylic paint all over the background. It would have made more sense if I put the splatters on before I put the cut file on. And I wanted there to be splatters on the blue background behind the cut file, but I didn't want to get a ton of splatters on the cut file itself. So at times I used the straw that was inside that container I have the watered down white acrylic paint in, and I just dabbed on a couple of spots of paint where I thought that they were needed. Now I'm using the heavy gel medium and I'm attaching those dimensional flowers and the leaves that have the diamond dust. And then I started noticing that the top of the layout didn't look very interesting. I had just a big area of blue, of navy blue, without anything really going on. And I wanted to put something on the top of the page. So I tried a couple of different things. One of the things that I thought might look good would be to add a piece of pattern paper. There were really so many pieces of beautiful pattern paper in this collection. So I thought that this paper with the butterflies on it might look nice at the top of the page. So I ripped a strip of paper so that it would have a torn edge, and then I distressed the edge further. I also cut out a large scallop and I put that under the word here. Neither of those items is going to stay on the page. I end up removing that scallop, even though I don't think it looks so bad right now. And I also take that piece of paper away from the top of the page. But in the meantime, I wanted to add some of these white branches to the clusters. So I used an Elizabeth Craft Design die, and it cut out a huge branch that had lots and lots of little branches on it. So I was able to cut that branch into smaller pieces, and then I added those little pieces to each of those flower clusters around the page. And I don't include all the footage of me working through this task because it took kind of a long time, but I like the way those little branches add a delicate element to the page, and I like the way it adds some white to other areas of the page as well. So this is where I decided that I did not like that strip of paper that was at the top. I preferred a pink strip of paper. So I put the pink strip of paper at the top, but I didn't end up leaving that at the top either. Before I took it away, though, I thought that I would try adding another strip of paper to the top. I initially added the pink paper because I thought that it would look a little bit less busy, but then apparently I decided to add that original piece of paper back in again. And I'm going to revisit those strips of paper yet again, but first I'm going to work on the heart in the word love. So I was thinking that it would look nice to have some layered hearts on top of the cut file heart. So I started off with some yellow pattern paper and I cut a heart, and I just did all of this freehand, and if I didn't like the way I cut something, I just cut it a little bit more. So first I made the yellow heart, and then I wanted to make a smaller green heart to layer on top of that. So I used the yellow heart as kind of a template and then cut the green paper a little bit smaller. And then once I had both of those pieces of paper the right size, I used my scissors and I distressed the edges of them. Then once I had the two hearts the sizes that I wanted them and had them distressed, I got out some fun foam and I added fun foam to the back of the yellow heart and then to the back of the green heart as well. I thought that the hearts would look nice layered with a little bit of foam in the middle to add more dimension to the hearts. Once I had the two hearts attached, I was thinking that I wanted to have even a little bit more distressing on the edges. So I went back in and I did a little bit more folding and slight tearing with my fingers. And then I wasn't quite done. I wanted to add an even smaller heart to the center of the hearts that are already there. So I found a small pink heart and I attached that in the center. I wanted to add some photo corners to my photos. If you have watched any of my videos, you may know that I really like to include photo corners. I like the way they add a finished touch to the layout, and then I also like to be able to bring different colors close to the photo, or in this case, photos. So I used an EK Success scalloped photo corner punch, and I punched out a few photo corners. I wanted to use 4 on that center photo, and then 2 on the right-hand side of the right photo, and then 2 on the left-hand side of the left photo. And before I attach those photo corners down, I use a little bit of Distress Oxide, and I ink the edges of the photo corners. And I'm actually just using whatever Distress Oxide in Black Soot is on the dauber. I didn't re-ink it because I just wanted a little bit of color on the edges. And there's plenty going on this layout, but I thought that I would add just a couple of butterflies. So I put a butterfly on the O for right now, and I'm going to add a few more a little bit later on. I also picked out a die cut that says Sweetest, and right now that's at the bottom of the cut file. I'm going to move that around as well. When I put the adhesive on the word Sweetest, I decided to move it on top of the E in the word Here. And then I took out some self-adhesive pearls from my stash and I began adding them in a couple of places on the layout. I add them to the photo corners. I add one to the center of the hearts. And then I put some pearls on that scalloped strip on the bottom that I later remove, but I thought that having pearls in those different places would help balance everything out. Next, I used some gel glue and I glued those little white branches to the page. I had a small strip of the same paper that I had at the top of the page where I put that torn piece of paper, so I thought that I could add that to the scallop strip to kind of tie the top and the bottom of the layout together. And then I was thinking that I would like to add some white to the flowers. So I got a little sponge and I'm using the heavy white gesso. This is the Finnabair brand. And I added just a few dabs of white gesso to each of the flowers and to the leaves as well. And now I'm adding a few more of the pearls to the photo corners. I added another yellow butterfly at the top of the page. I had added a couple of little foam pink hearts to the cut file, and now I'm adding some pearls to the centers of all of those hearts. And then I also added some pearls to either side of that little Sweetest sentiment that was toward the bottom of the page. I added a yellow butterfly from the foam stickers sheet. And then I took the photos off the top. I just didn't like the way the top of the layout looked. I didn't want that big area of blue, and I didn't like any of the things that I put at the top to try to balance off the page. So what I did instead was I cut the center photo down to the same size as the other two. And then off camera, I cut the entire background back a little bit, and I added a piece of white cardstock behind the pattern paper. And then I moved the cluster that before was toward the upper right hand side of the page down a little bit, and it made kind of a mess when I pulled it off the page, but I was able to luckily cover it up with the picture that's all the way on the right. And I had to make a couple of adjustments with the embellishments. I put a yellow butterfly on the top left hand side of the layout, and now there are 3 butterflies going diagonally down the page. Since I'm moving the cluster down next to the letter E, I needed something big to fill up that area, so I picked out another one of the flowers from the kit, and I did the same thing that I did to the other flowers. I added some gel, I dipped it in diamond dust, and then I added a little bit of gesso to it as well, so it would match in with all of the other flowers. And then instead of splattering the page with white again, I just used the tip of my paintbrush and I just dotted in a few more white dots to look like splatters. I had to fill in those few areas of blue that weren't visible before I made the changes to the pictures. And then here's where I add the white gesso to the large pink flower, and I'm finally happy with the composition and with the layout itself. Here are some close-ups of the completed layout. And as always, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to view the video. I have several more videos that'll be coming out over the next week or two, and I hope you'll join me for those. I hope that everybody has a fantastic day, and I will see you all again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.